Hey everybody, Rick here from Save vs. BS. So by this time, you might have scrolled upon me where you've noticed some guy talking about D&D with, 10 subscribers or 15 or whatever it is. And you might be like, that's all the world needs is another old guy talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Fair enough. If that doesn't interest you, keep scrolling, I guess. I wanted this to be my about me video and who I am and what I do and why I want to do this. My name's Rick. I have been playing D&D TTRPGs for 40 years. I guess since I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. That doesn't make me special. It just makes me stubborn. I started when I was a kid in the early 80s, and I don't know if it was just the commercial for Dungeons and Dragons, or maybe kids talking about it at school, possibly a combination of both. But I remember the TV would cut to a commercial segment on, Cheers or Days of Our Lives or whatever mom was watching. It would talk about this game, Dungeons and Dragons, and I was into, fantasy, choose your own adventure type books. Hadn't quite discovered Lord of the Rings stuff yet where I was reading novels, but my interest was definitely in sword and sorcery. After seeing the commercials, the uncanny feeling that entered the room when that commercial came on, because it was pure evil, of course, at the time. All those things checked all my boxes, and I had to have it. And I was just a little guy, man. I was just a little guy. And I told my mom. And my mother says, and I remember this vividly. Now, my mom's still around. I told my mom I wanted this, and she says, absolutely not. Satanic Panic was a thing, and I know a lot of you, based on the stats of who's watching me, that you can see kind of the age and genders and stuff of your viewers. A lot of you don't remember the Satanic Panic. It was real, and every adult was terrified if kids had dice that weren't like for playing Yahtzee. It was a real thing, as silly as that sounds today. By today's standards, it was ridiculous. I played in secret. I had a couple of buddies, and we'd play at their houses. A time or two, we even played at my house when they didn't really know what we were doing upstairs in my room. The one guy had the rule set, and we would all take turns with it, hoping we didn't get caught from our parents. But the guy's parents were pretty chill. So we had a beat-up rule book, and we really barely understood the rules, making it up as we went along for the most part. Half the time we made it up, and half the time we still make it up, and that's really what I loved, and I still love it. I did not own a D&D book until the early 90s. I had made it to high school age, started having a little bit of my own money, and my parents kind of started respecting my space a little bit. And so I think the first D&D thing I bought ever was and I even bought it on accident thinking it was the same game, was the second edition Player's Handbook. And I read through the Player's Handbook, and I'm like, maybe something's missing, and I read the Dungeon Master Guide, and I was enthralled with the Monstrous Compendium. It was this binder. It was a big binder you could buy, like this thick, and you just bought loose leaf monster stat blocks, and it was, looking back on it, it was garbage, man. But at the time, man, a whole page was dedicated to a monster, and it had a nice drawing, stat blocks, and all this stuff. I collected them all. I had, the Dark Sun. I had the Forgotten Realm. I mean, I had them all. I had every one of them. I realized I'd bought the wrong game, and that's what's funny. And so this is like 1990. My friends' copies are long gone. We're just playing from memory. So I actually started buying backwards. I went to find a basic set, and I found it's called the Black Box. I don't know if you don't see it talked about a lot. It was probably 1991. It was like a board game, but it was D&D, and it was an introductory module thing I don't even remember the game that came with it, what the storyline was, but it had a little board and pieces, and it was a fair introduction to the game. I basically realized at that moment I didn't need any more core rule sets. I just needed modules to play. Now, this is the time when the well for basic D&D was drying up. They had a lot of published content. They were really not going to publish anymore. I had to buy everything I could buy, or it was not going to be found. you know, so we would go to the bookshop and they'd sell a module. You guys have seen I have a copy of the original Keep on the Borderlands, but it was just a little folder with a little, you know, 28 pages in it or something, and that was a module, and you could read it and run it, and it was fun. Anyway, back to the script. How about that? Back to the script. I ramble. That's why I have a script. If you see me reading, guys, it's because I just go off the charts on a tangent. Like I said, I went backwards, and at one point, I probably owned literally everything made for BASIC. I had a lot of the AD&D stuff, but I really loved my basic D&D. If I could go find copies of stuff that I used to have, I would, you know, buy them back in a heartbeat if I could. But the game that really printed on me was basically the 83 version. That's the one I understand inside and out. I've built my whole approach around it. If you stripped away every single homebrew game design I've ever done over the years, that system's bones would still be ever present. Back when I was still trying to get good at this, I did make a lot of mistakes. I used to name every NPC. I mean, it'd be townsfolk, and I had a list longer than a freaking Denny's menu. And then I would forget who I gave what name to whom, and I would confuse myself and the party constantly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's not without great mistakes all the time. So what I do these days, if a player asks me the name of the barkeep or the guy sweeping the street, so I'll either say, she doesn't have a name. And I do that if it feels like the game is slowed down, where we just need to get moving. We're kind of, you know, getting away from the story a little bit. But sometimes I'll just say, you tell me, what's the name? And if we're running at a good pace, we have the time to, you know, make the player feel like they're a co-author. It does take a tiny bit of pressure off of the dungeon master to pretend that every single corner of the world is, you know, pre-scripted and fleshed out fully, when it's just not. I'm probably not ever going to give you any information that you haven't heard in some variation somewhere else. I do watch some D&D content, just a couple of the big heavy hitters in the business. I am deliberately going out of my way not to talk about things I've seen others talk about. So I try to do my own thing. The one thing I could tell, if you are never going to watch me again, I have the secret to great sessions, okay? And you already know what this is. This isn't by any means revolutionary. You just need to hear someone saying it out loud every once in a while to keep yourself grounded. You've read it in books, you've seen it in movies, and you've lived it in real life, okay? I struggled for years trying to run published modules word for word. They look great on the page, but it never sang to me at the table. Players had fun. I felt like I was trying to build a Lego set with missing pieces. And then it clicked. It's the idea and the theme that matter, not necessarily the structure and not the specific script. I take stories from everywhere. I've seen a million movies, read a million books, gothic horror, murder mysteries, even old kid detective stories, the freaking Boxcar Children, the Nancy Drew mysteries, the Hardy Boys, if anybody remembers any of that. I like Monster Hunter International, which is a great source for things. They actually came out with their own TTRPG. I do have tattoos. Monster Hunter International. That's Team Hoodoo. Monster Hunter International, MHI, let's go. I take all those stories and then I kind of rebuild them to fit my world. So I know my world inside and out. And I can pivot super fast. If the players do something crazy, I don't have to freeze up and flip through the module and find out what might be the answer. And that is really, be familiar with your world. That is what it means to run a game instead of just reading a game. My games are based in an unnamed world, which is loosely thematic to the Hangman's Daughter series by this German guy named Oliver Pouch or Pooch, something I can't pronounce, and Larry Correa's Monster Hunter International. It is like a combination of those two worlds. And you can drop anything in those worlds as long as you have the frame, as long as you frame it under the physics of that world. And it works for me. I think once a Dungeon Master loosens up and really sees that as the big picture, you'll have a way better time and your players will have a way better time. When I am not at the table, I am here. This is my pizza shop. I am the owner-operator. I really work here. Let me tell you, running a pizza shop teaches you everything you need to know about being a dungeon master. The way you deal with customers, the way you deal with employees, the way you deal with, suppliers and sales reps, all this stuff. And here's what I'm noticing, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Some people respond to tight structure and others need more space. Some employees need like bullet points and others need like a pep talk and a demonstration. The same goes for players. So you'll have a situation where you have that one louder player, nothing inappropriate, he's just a little more outgoing than the rest of the players. So what happens is that player starts steamrolling the quiet players. So you pull back and you refocus on the player who's actually at bat. You can't control every detail, but you do have control of the spotlight. So for a player to say they're not getting the fulfillment they expect because someone else is dominating the table, I've never had to have that conversation because I recognize that situation and I'm able to keep the spotlight where it belongs, even though you got someone a little more charismatic in real life, a little more outgoing, maybe a little more secure in their character. It's those players who tell the other players how their character should work. And you just have to go with it. The people aren't doing it intentionally. I've not seen it done with, malice or any ill will. So I'm not really concerned about it. But you just keep the spotlight on the person. You're going around the table. It's her turn. It's her turn. It's her turn. It's his turn. It's his turn. And other people kind of start talking over it. You just kind of recenter and say, okay, what's your character do in this situation? And it usually reels everybody back in without it getting awkward. Back to the script, because I am off the charts. What kind of dungeon master am I? I am old school. And I don't mean I watched a few Matt Colville videos and I bought a zine old school. I mean actual old school. Pre-internet, you had to use a crayon on your own dice. I play lethal games. I don't fudge die rolls, and I don't have a DM screen, and I haven't in years. I let the dice speak. I run one session at a time with very loose plans on potential future sessions, but that all changes based on what the players do, so I don't spend a whole lot of time working that far ahead. If you're working 6 sessions ahead in great detail, you are wasting your time. Unless you're on rails, and in that case, it's just not fun for your players, so it probably won't last that long anyway. If my players kill the wrong NPC, that becomes the story. That's the game. If they walk into a trap and die, that's the story. That's what we're doing. There's no winning or losing in tabletop role-playing games. There's just playing. If you're playing, you are doing it correctly. And now let's say modern systems, whatever that means. Whatever that means to you. I don't love what D&D has become. I think it's bloated. I think it's safe. I think it's engineered for maximum survivability and minimal consequence. It's just not Dungeons and Dragons anymore from someone who grew up with what Dungeons and Dragons actually is. It's a superhero simulator with a 50 hit point cushion and a defib in every pocket. I'm not mad at people who like it, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not for me. What I miss and what I try to revive is the risk, reward, and consequences. That's really what makes a table buzz. That's where the fun is. When you survive because you made the right call, not because the system refused to let you die, that is winning. So why make a YouTube channel in the first place? Fair question. Because I love this hobby. I really want to help protect it from being lost in a sea of overproduction and bad advice. And frankly, let's be completely honest here, I've done my adulting. You could fairly say I've won the game of life as far as all intents and purposes. I've raised my kids. I've built my business. I want to spend my time that I have left doing the things I love. Running games, talking about games, building a channel for people who still believe this is more than just a pastime or a children's plaything. And I understand I'm in the presence of giants in this industry. I'm not famous. I have no sponsors. I don't have a basement full of terrain and a Patreon army. I got an iPhone, and I got a MacBook, and I got 40 years of scars. So I've got some things to say. So no, you absolutely do not have to listen to me. And stats show most people have already scrolled on by now. But if you're still here, I'm not just here to be a guru. I'm just another lifer with a head full of dice and a heart full of the game. So if any of what I have said sounds good to you and rings true to you, if you miss the bite in your fantasy, the danger in your dungeons, the feeling that every session could go completely off the charts, then pull up a chair. Let's be friends, because we are just getting started. So what to expect going forward? I don't intend to guarantee a video every week or every 3 days. Every Thursday, we post videos on Thursdays. We post them when we got them, okay? Fun fact is my players didn't know I had a YouTube channel until very recently. And I think that's hilarious because I don't talk about it. I don't, hey guys, check out my YouTube. It's annoying. And I'm just, I'm annoying enough without peddling my wares. I peddle a pizza, If I had to choose between you clicking like and share versus walking in and buying a pie, I'm like, hey, come get the pie. The pie is probably more satisfying than my content. Anyway, my players are aware of my channel now, so I'm going to ask them to see how they feel about, maybe doing interviews with me and getting some of their feedback on the game. And I think that'd be fun. I'm not going to live play on this channel. I might put that on Patreon if my players are comfortable with it. I might put it on a separate channel. Save versus BS live, I would call that, or something. I have no idea. Because live play, when you're not the one playing, it actually sucks. This is not Critical Role. It's not produced. It's not scripted. So it is not as exciting to the onlooker as it might be for entertainment D&D. Back to the script. How about that? So I'm going to actually make another video at some point. There's a book series called the Boxcar Children. It was very popular in I read it in the early 80s. It's probably been out since the 50s or 60s. And that series will teach you how to run a campaign. Go buy the whole series right now. Go get the audiobooks. They're probably expensive for an hour and a half long read, but you can go buy the entire collection. If you don't have a lot of money and you want to know where to spend it to make your game better, the entire series of the Boxcar Children, start to finish, I don't even know how many books it is by now. That is the one you want. And I'm going to go through some of them and show you how it works. Because you can take the Boxcar Children and turn that whole world into a sandbox. It is a sandbox. It is so easy. And by the time you get done reading them, if you haven't read them when you were a child, you will be so familiar with them that your players can pivot on the fly and you just roll with it and they think, my God, this guy has it all planned. No, I don't have it planned. I'm just familiar with my setting. I've reacquired some of my old box sets, so we will have a look at some of those. And I wanted to go through some character creation videos about the old system versus modern, D&D 5+ is what I'm calling it. Because why'd you come out with it? Is it technically 6? Is it 5.5? What is it? This is Save versus BS. Subscribe or don't. You're the one rolling the dice, okay? If my content provides any value to you at all, subscribe and do all the things like that one guy does. That's super fun. Subscribe and do all the things. Thank you. I'm having a good time. I hope you are too.